afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you are having a great day and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boy Dave. And with the January transfer window right around the corner, the rumour mill gathering sort of momentum with Spurs being linked with players left, right and centre. Some of our long-term injuries, some of the results taking a nosedive as a result of them injuries, which clearly means we need backup. However, David Ornstein did say Tottenham did not have much money to go into the January transfer window with. So today I'm going to look at what contracts are coming up at Tottenham over the next 2 years or coming to an end over the next 2 years. And let's see what sort of fee we can recruit to maybe top up our January transfer budget. Now, look, I don't agree with it. I think we should have money. But if we're going off what David Ornstein says, well, then we might need to raise some funds. So let's get straight into it. And the first player we're going to start with is actually one of 3 goalkeepers on the list, believe it or not, and that is Hugo Lloris. Of course, let me start by saying he's been an absolute great servant since signing from Lyon from 2012, making 477 appearances for the club over many of competitions. I think keeping 151 clean sheets to his name. But his performance levels has absolutely nosedived over the last couple of seasons. Also, with Big Ange Postecoglou stripping him of the captaincy and the emergence of Guglielmo Vicario, his time at Tottenham has come to an end after falling down the pecking order even further behind Fraser Forster if the Carabao Cup is an indication to go by. But look, Hugo Lloris also said that he wanted to leave in the summer, right? Coming out and saying, look, it's time for an end. I want to try something else, is what he said. I have a desire for something else. I will carefully study what is possible. Now, what I would say off the back of them quotes, why didn't he go in the summer transfer window? But look, we gave Hugo every opportunity to leave in the summer. He spoke to clubs. I think he spoke to one out in Saudi. He rejected also a move to Lazio and a move to Nice as well. But that leaves Hugo Lloris in a situation this January where he can basically talk to any club he wants around Europe, outside of the UK, and agree a pre-contract with them. If he does do that, then, I would hope that the club, could say to that club, look, take him now for $1 million or so. We're not really going to gather anything for Hugo Lloris, but with him leaving, because he is registered in the squad, it will free up a homegrown spot and also 100k a week in wages, which will go back into the wage budget, which hopefully then means, that's wages we can spend on someone else being here. Now, the next goalkeeper I'm going to move on to is Big Fraser Forster. Of course, joined on a free, was absolutely brilliant in goals last season when he had to come in for Hugo Lloris. Look, he's good. He's good experience to be kept around. He played in the Carabao Cup, so I presume he's second choice goalkeeper. Although his contract is coming up at the end of the season, I don't envisage Fraser Forster leaving in January, because if he does and Hugo, that means then we will have to go into the market for a second choice keeper. So I think Fraser Forster will remain here beyond January and probably into the summer. And then I think we'll come the summer transfer market. I think then we might be looking at bringing in a sort of second choice goalkeeper or promoting the likes of a Keeley or a Gunter. Now, the next guy we're going to move on to, and that is Brandon Austin. Hold on there 1 second. Here he is here signing his contract there. His contract extension a couple of years ago. But, of course, a Tottenham Academy graduate, but yet to make an appearance for Tottenham Hotspur, and is one of 5 first-team goalkeepers on the club's sort of list. Limited experience under his belt as well, only loan spells at likes of Viborg in Denmark and Orlando in the MLS. He's never really going to make the grade at Tottenham. He's 25 years of age, and I suspect he will look to move on in this January in order to, further his own career. But again, we're going to recoup very little in terms of wages. He's only on $7,500 a week, so I'm not really going to make much of a difference there. But I think we'll be 2 goalkeepers of the 5 out the window in this January, with very little being recouped in terms of being able to spend. Now, moving on to the next player is Eric Dier. I can't believe I'm going to say this, but Dier is in his 10th season as a Spurs player since joining from Sporting Lisbon 10 years ago. Yes, I said 10. I cannot believe he has outlasted the likes of a Harry Kane, Jan Vertonghen, Toby Alderweireld, some of our greats. Just cannot believe it. Of course, he spent the majority of his Tottenham career as a backup, bar maybe the couple of seasons under Jose and Conte. But, he only really stepped in the first team as in a period where we were sort of struggling for defenders. We were coming to the end with Toby and Jan. And we hadn't quite spent money on that centre back position, bar Soto Romero. And we gave Dier every opportunity to prove his worth at Tottenham. He hasn't taken it. Of course, latest coming in at Wolves, costing us that late equaliser, and could have done better on the second goal in terms of reading the game and positioning as well. Look, it's come to the point nobody really wants him here at Tottenham anymore. He costs us goals. He costs us points. Part of our worst defence ever last season. This saga can no longer continue. For me, one of Tottenham Hotspur's worst signings ever. And it's actually, I've argued this quite some time, standing in the way of this club progressing, because whether he's here as a first-team player or as a backup player, whenever he steps in, performances drop, results drop, and it can no longer continue. Of course, now he has been linked with the likes of a return to sport, and he was at the what's that called, the Web Summit in Lisbon, speaking, saying that he'd like to return one day. There's been links to Bayern Munich. I'm pretty sure Harry Kane won't want him out there. That means he definitely won't win anything. And of course, a return to play under Jose Mourinho at Roma. All been linked there the last few months. So there is hope that we might be able to cash in on Eric Dier. But again, in the same situation as Hugo Lloris, can sign for any club outside of the UK on a pre-contract. But then it means if that club do want him in the January, Spurs can demand a bit of a fee. However, it'd be a lot less if he agrees that pre-contract. So again, one we can cash in. I think there's probably about 10 million in this. I would hope. Maybe I'm reaching a little, but also frees up 85k a week in wages. So between Hugo, Brandon Austin, and Eric Dier, you're on nearly 200k a week freed up in terms of wages as well. Now, that brings me on to the next player, and this one, I'm sad about this one, but it is Ivan Perisic, of course, joined us on a free from Inter Milan. And in terms of as free signings go, I think Ivan Perisic has been a very useful signing for us. 1 goal, 14 assists across 50 games. Some would argue maybe they expected a little bit more from Perisic, but I've been very happy with his contribution compared to others. But look, unfortunately, he had that ACL injury, and I think he's very much played his last game for Tottenham. I think he is looking to go back to Croatia come January, maybe to finish out his career out there. But allowing the likes of again, sorry, just with Perisic, you're going to get very little in terms of transfer fee off him. You might be looking at about 2.5 to maybe 5 million if you're very, very lucky. But look, allowing the likes of Højbjerg, Dier, and Perisic to leave in January. Look, let's be honest, we'd be lucky to raise 10, 15 million out of letting them three go. But what you do is you free up 3 foreign spots in the squad, which means then we can go and look in the European market, which we weren't able to do on the last few days of the summer transfer window. But also, you're talking, 100k a week for Hugo, 180k a week for Perisic, 85k a week for Dier. So you're already at nearly 400k there a week freed up in terms of wages, which is absolutely colossal for us in the wage department. But again, very little in terms of transfer fees for the summer or for the January transfer window. Now let's move on to another player, Zinedine Salzburg, PierreEmerick Hazard. Now this player's contract is not up until 2025. That's June 30th, 2025. So he's still got a season and a half to run on his contract. But there were rumors that he wanted to leave this summer, and that did not happen for him as a potential deal to Fulham did collapse because, of course, if we remember, Paulinho was on his way to Bayern Munich. Højbjerg was on his way to Fulham to replace him. However, the Paulinho to Bayern Munich collapsed, which meant we ended up hanging on to PierreEmerick Hazard. But he is at the stage of his career where I think he said it himself. He doesn't want to be a backup. He wants to be in the first team. He wants to be playing week in, week out. And the way he sees it, he's got plenty to offer. So, but look, I would make the argument to keep someone like Højbjerg around. We've got Papa Matasar, we've got Basuma heading to AFCON. Madison is out till January. How will that continue on after the January window? Then you're left with the likes of Skip and Lo, who for me haven't added anything this season whatsoever. So that would leave us sort of short in the midfield for a little period of time. And I think there is benefits to keeping Højbjerg around. Look, against Wolves was not his greatest day out. But every other time he's been called upon this season, he has done a very, very good job for Tottenham Hotspur. But I think this one depends on whether he wants to commit or whether he wants out in January. But I do think, personally, I would like him to stay. I think Postecoglou might want him to stay around as well. But look, Højbjerg, you would say off this list, is probably one where there's actually a bit of value in him, a bit of a resale value in Højbjerg. So, unfortunately, I do see maybe Højbjerg leaving this January, maybe get 30, 40 million for him, which will boost our January kitty quite significantly. But then you're going to have to, you can't use that money to go and buy in other positions. You have to use that money, reinvest it into the centre midfield. And I'd argue, what centre midfielder would you get out there for that price that guarantees you more or less a performance nearly every time the guy takes the pitch? But you're also talking about, professionalism, which in this day and age, people would say that's a given. But as we've seen at Tottenham in years gone by, clearly it ain't. Someone that's always available. There's a lot of benefits of keeping someone like Højbjerg around there. But I do hear the arguments of people want to let him go, even though I sort of disagree with it. But he is one you could maybe look at in terms of bringing in a bit of money this January. Now we will move on to Ben Davies. Look, I'll be honest. We signed him for pittance off Swansea. He's been here, I think this summer will make him 10 years at this football club. Again, another one I can't believe has lasted 10 years. And he spent the majority of his Tottenham career actually as a backup. But look, in terms of options this season, right? We're short at left back. He can double up as a left-sided centre back in behind Mickey van der Ven. I take the argument that he had a very good game against Wolves, but as in terms of a backup to left back, played there against Palace, played there against Fulham, was absolutely shocking. He doesn't have the legs to play left back in the Premier League in this sort of Ange Postecoglou system anymore. So I would look at him more as a backup centre back. And look, he had a very good game against Wolves. But that last goal, if you go back and look at it, it started with him in possession. He had two options. Could have went back to Vicario, could have went out wide to Dier. He didn't. He panicked. He started being pressed. He panicked, shifted it onto Højbjerg, who was also being pressed. He panicked, shifted it onto Lascelles, who was also being pressed. And then that's where the goal started. Whereas if Davies just made that correct decision, going back to Vicario, going out wide to Dier, it basically stops that press. It allows us to play out. So a bit of a headless chicken moment by Davies in terms of that second goal. But look, every manager seems to keep him around as a backup. They seem to think he's dependable. Personally, I would look to cash in on him this January. I think there's definitely probably about 10 million there for us from Ben Davies. But I can also understand the arguments why people would say keep him around. And then that just takes me on to a few more. You've got Lascelles, of course, up in 2.5 years' time, but his contribution this season has been next to nothing. Again, he's one I'd potentially maybe look to cash in on this January if possible and go and replace him. But then, of course, there's a couple from loan. You've got the likes of Ndombele, Joe Rodon, Japhet Tanganga, Reguilon, Troy Parrott. I think decisions will be made on them come summer. They all have a year and a half left on their contract. But Tottenham have some massive decisions to make. A lot of the players' contracts who are coming up, there's very little resale value in them. So I would suggest what David Ornstein has sort of said come January could very well be true, because when you look at what the markets we participated in the last few seasons, we can't sell players purely because we're trying to sell a lot of shit from we're trying to sell, what would you call, the backups of the Pochettino squad, some of the players that were brought in here under Steve Hitchen who were not good enough, and we really are sort of struggling to sort of sell these guys and ship them on. So I'd argue, where's the money going to come from for future windows? I get the owners have, they make a lot of money. They've got more diverse revenue streams than any other football club across the world. So I would hope that there's more money there. But Sean, has broke down finances before and sort of explained why there may not be. But when you look at this, it doesn't exactly encourage you, because it's not a good situation when you keep spending money, but you're recouping very little for what you're selling. Hopefully now we can just be done with a lot of these renegades, get them out, and then move on from there. And I think I have one last player out there, and that is Ryan Sessegnon. look, poor guy's Tottenham career has been absolutely blighted by injury and sort of really failed to get going. Contract up in a season and a half. Look, I'll be honest, I would look to cash in. You know, he hasn't been available under any manager. The opportunities he has had at Tottenham, you've seen a couple of good games against maybe some of the bigger teams, but I've seen a lot more bad games than he has had good. And look, in terms of wanting to build a squad, it's not an on Young, nothing against the kid, but we can't have players that are just not available, you know, because when it comes to, for instance, a Doji suspension, you're having to mix and match your back four. You're having to pull Emerson over to left back to play there because this guy's not fit. So we have to end this saga, cash in on him. Hopefully there's about 10 million there as well and move on. But look, if you're selling Højbjerg, Sessegnon, maybe Lo Celso, you might recuperate, you know, 50, 60, 70 million, which then gives us money going into January transfer window. Not a lot, but what I will say is we'll definitely free up a lot in wages, which gives the club a bit of a chance to maneuver around the books with a bit of clever accountancy. But look, that's all the players' contracts that are up over the next 2 seasons. Let me know in the comment section below what you want to see happen this January out of this list here. What players do you think we need to cash in on? And what positions do you think we need to buy in this January? Feel free to put your player suggestions forward. You know, there's always some players out there that maybe, well, myself particularly, may not have heard about. I'd struggle to think that you'd stun Jack with a player you'd put forward because the guy knows absolutely everybody. You know, he sits there on a Tuesday night watching the Croatian League. He's an absolute animal. But please do get your comments in below. Let me know your thoughts. And have a great day. I'll see you back here tomorrow. As always, come on, you Spurs. In the mighty Ange Postecoglou, we trust. And we have to be able to do something in January to help build what Ange Postecoglou has done. And as always, we never stop.